My name is Michael Yablonski.
You may hear that name and not know the incredible story behind it. Close your eyes and imagine this picture. You're walking down Franklin Street with your friends, laughing, sharing stories. As you approach the Starbucks, hoping to get an iced coffee before you head to class, you see a man dancing. He's dressed in a chaotic outfit. From head to toe, white puffy clothes pierce your eyes. Breaking up these white pieces are a rainbow belt. Just as you turn to tell your friends what you're seeing, you notice his large boots. In this hot weather, he must be crazy. You think to yourself, you nudge your friends quickly, making sure they glance so he doesn't notice your stare as you walk past. Days later, you notice he's there again, this time wearing an all-green outfit, still dancing alone, still wearing crazy clothing. If you found yourself walking down Franklin Street, you might actually know this scene. You're immediately picturing Mike Yablonski, yet I bet you didn't know that was his name. Now let's go back to the beginning, where it all started.
When I was a child, I didn't dance at all, and surprisingly, I really didn't even dance very much when I was in college. I was mostly a student that spent a lot of my time studying. However, when I was in college was the early 80s, and there was a lot of good dance music around. Like it was just after the disco period and coming into some new kind of period, which I don't remember, but there was a lot of good music around, and so everyone danced a little bit in college, and I played a few musical instruments for a little while, but mostly I spent a lot of time studying. I started dancing again just 2 years ago to do a protest dance during the Black Lives Matter movement, so it is a new thing for me.
Describe the moment you found dance to be a part of your routine.
Okay, so the moment was I was dancing for 2 days during the Black Lives Matter movement, and on the second day, whenever I would stop to take a rest from dancing, a lot of students would come up to me and say that they liked the dancing a lot, and they asked me, please don't stop. So then it became part of my routine because I realized at that time that I could use it as a way to meet a lot of students and then either tutor those students or talk to them about environmental science or something like that. So it became like my way to make contact. And especially, as you may know, I don't know, in my generation we had a term called the generation gap, which is that sometimes young people didn't associate with older people very much. So I realized this could be sort of like a way to bridge the generation gap because I was doing something that young people were interested in, which was surprising to me actually. One student asked me, why don't you feel self-conscious? And that's very simple. The students maybe can't understand this because when I was young, I would have felt self-conscious. When you get older, you reach a point where you realize that as long as you're not doing anything offensive or anything that would bother anybody, there's no reason not to have self-confidence because truthfully, as you get older, you just don't care anymore. I mean that in a good way. You don't care what people think about you because when you get older, you know that lots of things are acceptable and you shouldn't worry about what people think about it.
What is life like for you outside of your time on the streets of Franklin?
I do two kinds of work. Right now I don't even consider the dancing my work, but the two kinds of work I do are I tutor students in chemistry, which is now not a big thing after the virus. But the other thing I really like to do is I do a permaculture project, which is agriculture, a type of agriculture. Really, I should say I started many years ago. Even when I was young, I always liked landscaping. And as I got older, also pretty many years ago, I used to do a lot of landscaping with ornamental plants like trees, shrubs, and perennial plants. And I still do some of that now, but gradually over time, I made the transition to growing plants that are edible or useful in some way. But I still grow a lot of ornamental plants, and I spend a lot of my time doing that.
What got you interested in the environment? Describe the moment you knew that it was a large passion of yours.
Okay, so this is an easy answer because when I was young, very young, like when I was a boy, or I would say around the time I was a young teenager, around 13 years old. But anyway, I always liked nature, even before I knew that was biology. But my background was kind of unusual because I always liked nature and art. So when I was young, actually, one of the things, for example, that I used to do a lot is I used to draw a lot of pictures of birds. And when I first went to college in Pennsylvania, my undergraduate, the first 2 years I was actually an art major because I knew I liked nature and art, and when I first went into college, I thought I wanted to do art. when I was in college for about 2 years, I was taking biology electives and I was doing well in them. So that gave me the confidence. I changed my major to biology because it was a more practical thing to get a job and things like that. But even now, as people can see, I still like these two things equally. So the time when I first knew that I liked nature or biology or science and the environment, and now sustainability in the environment, well, of course, when I was young, I liked science, but in those days, of course, sustainability was not a big deal. And the environmental problems were known because that would have been back in the late 70s. And you know, I think sometimes young people need to be reminded in this country, in the 60s and 70s, what we call the counterculture in this country was very aware of the environment. And then I feel like after that, some people forgot about it for a while. But when I was too young to be in the hippie generation, but when I was a young adult, there were still people around that were part of the hippie movement, and I was very much influenced by them. And also because I grew up in the country, that helps a lot to become interested in biology and nature.
How can students find and connect with you?
Okay, so the easiest way is, well, first of all, I should say a lot of students on this campus already have my email because I may have tutored them, or they may have talked to me and been interested in taking my email, so students can ask other students. But the very easiest way is that I spend a lot of time in the afternoon in Starbucks because that's sort of like my library. By the way, I do go to the library on campus and it's very good. But when I want to study and not be interrupted, I would go to the library. But when I want to study, and then I don't mind if I was interrupted by a student asking a question, I would sit in Starbucks. And so oftentimes, and that's where students mostly have found me, when I'm sitting in Starbucks.